Violent or peaceful, we all have to face death. But what does happen when you die?
Okay.
I felt this buzzing around the ears, and I heard the doctor say, "I don't believe it. She died on me. I don't believe it." And I thought, who's dead? I'm sitting up on the head of a bed looking at a body. I thought, I'm not dead. I'm more alive than they are.
As I got closer, I realized that the key to survival, to my life, to staying on this planet, was to just move into the light. If I went through the door, I would die, and I knew that.
Death has always been considered the final mystery, that undiscovered country, as Shakespeare called it, from whence no traveller returns. But with today's modern resuscitation techniques, they are coming back and living to tell the tale.
Yeah, I was pinned to the floor with the light. It was across my chest, and I was being electrocuted. I was being crushed with 240 volts. That's the only way to describe it. I knew that I was failing. I knew that I was fading. I was going to die. There was no two ways about it. I'd thought of a lot of ways of dying, and this wasn't one of them. I'd got to the point where I realized that if I couldn't stay conscious, I would die. And I started to fade to black. I just started to go out. And it was at that point that I moved outside myself. It was an awareness more than anything else of no longer being inside my body, but in fact being up near the roof, looking down at my body.
Harry saw his death as if it was someone else's. He watched himself from outside his body, and he wasn't scared at all. He found he could slide between the spaces in the air itself. Ecstasy touched him.
Ordinary language.
Dr. Raymond Moody is the author of bestseller Life After Life. He's collected over 1,000 stories, all of them very similar.
They say that it's as though a portal, some call it a window, some a tunnel, or a narrow enclosed space, seems to open before them, and they go into this tunnel very rapidly into a brilliant, warm, and they say loving light.
I moved towards the door, and in moving towards it, I realized that the door was the answer to life and death. It was the balance, and I felt that to go through the door would be death and I would die, but to stand near the door and to just touch the light, to be bathed in the light, I could live. It was just a mental decision that I knew was real. I got to the door, and I stood in front of it, and I moved into the light. And at the point of moving into the light, it was the most magical feeling. It was a sudden revelation of just universal consciousness. It was as though the whole reason for being here was there in front of me. It was just, I had every piece of knowledge that ever existed in the universe.
The bright light is brighter than any of the lights you use here, our sun, anything.
Is it dazzling?
No, you can look at it, and you, according to your faith, you recognize the light as your own personal savior.
Well, one particular man who was dying of cancer and had experience said that he really didn't want to come back from whatever experience he had, and he was looking forward to the time that he would meet God after death. So, you know, I mean, I'd be scared myself, but he certainly wasn't, you know.
Apart from the pleasure of the light, there can be some uncomfortable moments when a person's whole life flashes before them.
They see everything they have ever done. They say that it's in full color, 3 dimensions, and not only that, but also takes place from a third-person point of view. For instance, they say if they see an action in which they have acted lovingly toward a human being, they take the perspective of the person who was receiving the love, and they understand those feelings. On the other hand, if they see actions in which they haven't been so loving, the affect is displaced upon them. They can take the point of view of that person who was hurt, and they feel all those feelings.
Hospital staff know a lot about death, but they can still be surprised by those they bring back to life.
They in fact describe things that happened exactly, particularly comments that were made. The thing that strikes me, in fact, is how accurate their descriptions have been. It's really made me more aware of the death and dying situation. I mean, I having come across it so often, it's something that has made me, I suppose, look upon it as not being such a bad thing.
I can remember on one occasion coming back, and a little girl that her parents had been drowned and her little brother had been drowned. It's a most extraordinary story, on the North Coast on a holiday. And she herself, when resuscitated, told the nurses, then told us that she went into a garden while she was unconscious. She was there greeted and looked after by a very kind man who took her to her mother and father, who took her to her little brother, who she was worried about, introduced her to people who were her grandparents, who she'd never seen, and the mother told her where to find certain articles and papers when she returned home so she'd be okay. She then came back home and found the articles. It appears that not only did she had never met her grandparents, but she knew facts about her grandparents, apparently, that there was no way she could have been told. So, most extraordinary. She was most serene, with great hope at the funeral, because she felt that they were with God, the people were with God. So, you know, it's been, those sort of experiences seem to have changed people's lives and to make them happier and more secure, even to the point that they no longer fear death.
When people are told that they have to go back, what they'll tell me is that they feel that they had something left to do.
I felt I had a mission. I hadn't fulfilled what I wanted to do on Earth. I was probably a little selfish. I was enjoying myself immensely being on Earth. I'd just set up my own business, and I was full of a million concepts and ideas, and I had a massive amount of energy to put into it, and I didn't feel like being cheated out of it that early in my life.
As I walked along, the guides would ask me, "Don't you want to go back?" I said, "No, let's go. It's pretty." "Don't you think you should go back?" And I could begin to hear my daughter then saying, "Mommy, don't leave me. Come back."
I think the most important lessons that I have learned from people who have almost died are not about death, but about life.
I'd say there's nothing on Earth that compares with the experience of being at the edge of the afterlife. Some things come close, but that's it.
You have never been so loved in all your life as you are in what they call death.